the marketplace of heaven. They turned eternity into a business. They packaged forgiveness, put a price on salvation, and placed God on the shelves of the capitalist supermarket. The sacred became merchandise. The divine a registered trademark. And thus, the soul of the people was put up for sale. This is not a mere attack on faith but a painful truth. Religion has been transformed into a tool of power. What was originally comfort and hope for the oppressed, capitalism turned into a mechanism of domination. I said it and I repeat it. Religion is the opium of the people. Not out of contempt for the human spirit, but as a denunciation of the ideological anesthesia that numbs the masses while the owners of capital continue to fill their coffers. Look around you. Temples are now theaters, altars are business showcases, preachers are entrepreneurs of faith. With honeyed voices they promise prosperity in exchange for tithes, selling the illusion of a better life while their own luxury multiplies. In the name of God they build empires but not spiritual ones, financial empires. Faith, which should liberate, has been chained to capital. It is offered in installments, measured in donations, translated into membership statistics. The logic of the market has invaded even the soul. It's no longer about believing but about consuming. The believer has become a client, and the more they suffer, the more they buy. Promises, blessings, sacred objects, wholesale miracles. It is the cruelest of investments, giving up the little one has in exchange for the illusion of a prepaid paradise. That is religious alienation, the spiritual dispossession of the worker, who deposits their hope in a future heaven while their present remains misery. And the system is grateful. Because a domesticated faith is a perfect tool. It tells the poor that their pain is virtue, that their obedience will be rewarded, that their rebellion is sin. Thus, religion, hijacked by the logic of capital, becomes the invisible leash that keeps the people on their knees. It's no coincidence that megachurches with golden walls flourish while neighborhoods sink into hunger. Suffering has become raw material, desperation, a business opportunity. Faith, symbolic capital that yields dividends. And still, some ask why I criticized it. It wasn't spirituality I rejected, but its exploitation. It wasn't comfort I denounced, but its use as an instrument of subjugation. The real scandal is not that man seeks God, but that capitalism sells him to the highest bidder. Because the opium is not hope, but the induced dream that keeps the oppressed asleep while the masters of money steal even their soul. The criticism of religion is the premise of all criticism. Karl Marx, Introduction to the Critique of Hegel's Philosophy of Right. The Business of Salvation. Today the world shamelessly displays what I had only anticipated in the 19th century, the perfect synthesis of faith and capital. Religion is no longer preached, it is produced. It is not celebrated, it is sold. Faith has become a spectacle, lights, cameras, and pastors who behave like celebrities, surrounded by luxury while the people hand over their last coins hoping for a miracle that never comes. And that miracle, the real one, would be to awaken, to break with the system that feeds on the hunger and fear of the poor. But that miracle is not announced from the pulpit, because the pulpit is part of the business. I did not exaggerate when I wrote that religion is the opium of the people. I was precise. Religion, under capitalism, is an emotional enterprise, a pyramid where a few accumulate wealth and prestige, and the masses carry guilt and obedience. The profits are not only monetary, they are also political and cultural. The millionaire pastor enjoys influence and respect. The poor believer bears the feeling of eternal debt to God. Thus, faith has become a fetish, a magical object that promises comfort but guarantees submission. Paradise became a marketing campaign and hell has an address. The periphery, the favela, the forgotten fields where the people cry out for justice and receive promises. Where bread is asked for, prayers are offered. Where education is needed, resignation is taught. I never hated God. I hated the lie hidden behind his name. I hated the machinery that uses the sacred to maintain the order of the masters. Unmasking the business of faith is a revolutionary act. Because the faith that liberates does not charge admission, does not ask for bank transfers, does not punish doubt. That faith was silenced because it does not generate profit. Today temples look like banks and prophets like businessmen. Prosperity is preached but only for those who sell it. They speak of humility while accumulating fortunes, of renunciation while living in mansions, of charity while building empires. They are not spiritual guides, they are executives of the beyond, merchants of the soul. And their product, of course, is the most profitable of all, hope. An intangible product, without guarantee, that can be charged for a lifetime without delivering anything in return. Heaven became merchandise, forgiveness became a premium service, and blessings, monthly subscriptions. all wrapped in sweet speeches about love and peace, but never about class struggle. Because love without justice is just anesthesia. The pulpit, once an altar, is now a moral shield that protects an economic structure. Behind it hide the bankers of faith, who have turned human desperation into circulating capital. And it works because when life is hard, the promise of the beyond seems like a reasonable investment. But it is a cruel investment. It trades your cry for a prayer, your rebellion for submission, your hunger for justice for postponed hope. And while you wait for paradise, others turn your waiting into their business. I merely lifted the veil. I showed that it's not about individual sins, but about a material structure of domination. The same system that turns health into privilege, education into merchandise, and work into slavery disguised as opportunity, now also turns the soul into a financial asset. Religion, under the rule of capital, no longer seeks man's salvation, it seeks his loyalty as a customer. And as long as the people keep paying for their hope, the true gods will continue to be the bankers, the pastors, and the owners of the temple. The criticism of religion ends in the criticism of that veil of tears whose halo is religion. The faith industry. Marx understood it with relentless clarity. Religious alienation is the supreme form of alienation. Not because it is more sacred but because it is more effective. It diverts the gaze of the oppressed from concrete injustice, the kind that bleeds, that kills, that exploits, and redirects it toward an unreachable horizon where revolution never arrives. The alienated believer can endure daily misery, street violence, the unbearable weight of labor, and still believe that it all serves a divine purpose. They think their suffering is a test, that their pain has meaning, that enduring injustice with faith brings them closer to redemption. And there, precisely there, is where alienation fulfills its most perverse function. It transforms resignation into virtue and hope into a chain. The system knows this. That's why it manufactures faith like it manufactures products. The capitalist religion industry is flawless. The pastor demands tithes and the believer gives not only money but their body, mind, and will. The cycle feeds itself. Suffer, pray, donate, wait for the miracle that never comes. Suffer more, pray more, donate more. Until faith ceases to be comfort and becomes a prison. None of this is accidental. It is a social structure of control. As long as the people are trapped in the illusion of salvation, they will not rise to demand justice. Religion acts as collective anesthesia. It soothes the pain but hides its causes. And when someone doubts, when someone dares to ask questions, the system reacts. The questioner is labeled a non-believer, a heretic, an enemy of God. Guilt becomes a tool of surveillance. Punishment no longer comes from outside but from within. Thus, alienation armors itself. The believer, paralyzed by fear of sin, protects the very system that enslaves them. And conscience, which should be an instrument of liberation, becomes its deepest cage. To me, religious alienation is not a matter of personal faith, it is a social, political, and economic problem. As long as the people remain alienated, they will remain enslaved, and as long as they are enslaved, they will continue to be exploited. Faith, which could be a cry for freedom, has been turned into a chain of obedience. To break that chain is to break with the entire system that sustains it. To break the silence, to break blind submission, to break the passivity disguised as devotion. Because true faith is not obedience, it is awakening. True faith does not wait for heaven, it transforms the earth. Marx called us to that task, to understand that alienation is not an individual weakness, but a collective strategy of power. Capitalism has turned the human soul into its final marketplace. Beneath its gleaming display cases lies the shopping mall of redemption, where guilt is raw material and forgiveness is sold as a luxury commodity. There is no mystery. Here, faith is money, the sacred is transaction, and salvation is a product with a price tag. Every sin has a fee, every blessing a label. Capitalism, master of turning everything into merchandise, did not spare even the divine. The religious industry sells hope but delivers debt. It turns the believer into a customer, and the customer into a prisoner. Tithes, offerings, prosperity campaigns, all are refined forms of spiritual exploitation. The poor give what they don't have, hoping for a miracle, and in return receive an invisible contract that binds them to their own despair. At its core, capitalist religion is a bank of the soul, and the interest it charges is obedience. The faithful pay with their belief, their silence, their submission. And meanwhile, capital gives thanks. The criticism of religion is the premise of all criticism. Man, in tearing away the illusions about his condition, must learn to tear away the condition that requires illusions. The golden throne, the mercy industry. There is a sinister logic in the alliance between faith and capital. It's not just immoral, it's a systematic way of appropriating others' misery. While temples shine with gold and high-definition screens, the streets sink into poverty. Capitalist religion feeds on guilt, keeping the faithful docile and dependent, chained to a promise that is never fulfilled as long as faith remains a currency. The message is flawless, moralism wrapped in emotional blackmail. The believer is declared a sinner, but salvation is offered, provided they pay the price. Thus emerges the market of guilt and forgiveness, where the merchandise is invisible, but the cost is real and devastating. The poor end up enslaved twice. First by the economic system that exploits them. Then by the commodified religion that justifies that exploitation in the name of God. It's a vicious cycle. Suffer, donate, wait for a miracle, suffer again. And each turn of that will fuels the machinery of profit. Marx furiously denounced this farce, the alliance between pulpit and capital, between cross and market. Religious leaders accumulate wealth, influence, and political power. They live in mansions, travel by jet, control TV channels and corporations, while the people kneel in search of comfort. Their blessing is a dark pact. Pain persists but is disguised as virtue. This forgiveness market doesn't just exploit faith, it turns it into a mechanism for power accumulation. Preachers are no longer prophets, they are entrepreneurs. Temples are no longer sanctuaries, they are transnational corporations. The altar has become a stage of power where hope is sold to the highest bidder. And the farce is complete when these leaders, rich, influential, politically shielded, present themselves as guardians of morality. Their morality, however, is selective. They remain silent in the face of injustice, condemn the poor for their hunger, and make private deals with the owners of capital. They are not spiritual guides, they are partners in power. Marx understood it. Every ideology reflects material power relations. The religious elite is living proof. Their wealth guarantees their influence. Their influence guarantees new laws that perpetuate inequality. And their carefully constructed sanctity shields their power from public scrutiny. Criticizing the millionaire pastor becomes blasphemy. Denouncing the alliance between faith and money is interpreted as an attack on God. But in truth, questioning that alliance is an act of liberation. Because at its core, this is not just about religion, it's about a political structure of domination. The more power these leaders accumulate, the more legitimacy they gain. The more they manipulate the masses, the richer they become. And the richer they get, the more they are revered. It's a closed, almost perfect cycle. The people remain on the lowest rung, divided between blind faith and political submission. Religion no longer merely anesthetizes the conscience, it manages obedience. Beneath the shine of temples, Marx revealed the hidden face of exploitation. Faith is used to justify present misery and postpone justice to a beyond that never arrives. Earthly suffering ceases to be the result of an oppressive system and is presented instead as divine trial. Hope, transformed into anesthesia, diverts the people's gaze from concrete struggle toward an imaginary heaven. Thus, the promise of paradise replaces the fight for the land. The worker accepts poverty as destiny, the poor give thanks for their pain as a blessing. Meanwhile, the masters of capital enjoy the fruits of inequality, blessed by the religion of order. And this dynamic is no accident, it's structural. The deeper the poverty, the stronger the business of faith. The greater the suffering, the more profitable the hope. Capitalist religion doesn't just legitimize exploitation, it feeds on it. Spiritual profit is no accident, it is essence. Pastors and leaders become entrepreneurs of hope, parasites of the collective soul. Offerings are not gestures of love, they are mandatory payments in the market of redemption. The altar is a cash register and faith its fuel. All of this rests on three pillars: ignorance, fear, and alienation. The people do not see that their devotion has become a system that drains their energy, their money, and their will to fight. Thus, oppression is perpetuated and liberation postponed. But there is a way out, comrade. It lies in consciousness. In the truth Marx taught us to seek. Breaking the religious illusion is the first step toward human emancipation. It's not about abolishing faith, but about freeing the sacred from the market. Returning hope to the realm of the material. Because the faith that liberates does not promise heaven, it builds justice on earth. That is the revolutionary task. That is authentic faith, the one that does not wait, the one that acts. The emancipation of religious consciousness is the condition for all human emancipation. The faith that liberates. The struggle against profit in faith is not a war on spirituality. On the contrary, it is a cry for social justice. A call to restore religion's human meaning, to stop being a chain and become a bridge, to cease oppressing and begin liberating. It's not about destroying faith, but purifying it from the market, tearing it away from the altar of capital where it has been sacrificed. Authentic faith is not sold, it is lived. It is a force of transformation, not a tool of submission. Liberating truth demands we look downward, not upward. Salvation is not in a distant paradise, but in concrete revolution here on earth. Divine justice does not descend from heaven, it is built by the hands of conscious men and women. Only when we dismantle the economic and social structures that sustain exploitation, inequality, and misery can true redemption exist. The emancipation of the soul is tied to the emancipation of the body. There can be no spiritual freedom where there is hunger, nor redemption where there is exploitation. Faith without justice is hypocrisy. Spirituality without equality is privilege. Marx left us a powerful tool, radical critique. A critique that does not destroy out of hatred, but exposes out of love for truth and humanity. With it, we can tear away the veils of illusion, free consciousness from religious anesthesia, and return to the people the clarity that power has stolen. Our task is clear: to open the eyes of the sleeping, break the invisible chains that bind believers to their own submission, and build a world where faith is not measured in tithes, but in acts of solidarity. Where hope is not merchandise but a real force of transformation. Where religion does not legitimize poverty, but fights alongside the people to eradicate it. That is the true revolution capitalism fears. The union of spirit and matter, of faith and justice, of consciousness and action. Because when human beings understand that heaven is not above, but in the earth they walk on, no power can continue to dominate them. Breaking this farce is more than critique. It is an act of creation, an affirmation of life. It is building a future where faith is an instrument of freedom, not profit. Where love is not obedience but resistance. Where the people no longer kneel their hope before golden thrones, but raise it as a banner of emancipation. That is the faith that liberates. The one that doesn't wait for a miracle, it builds it. The critique of religion culminates in the doctrine that man is the supreme being for man,